Hello and a very good evening. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. I'm Frank Pereira with the news tonight. Here are the latest headlines. Moderate to heavy voting for by-elections to 3 Lok Sabha and 33 Assembly seats. Polling largely peaceful, barring stray clashes in some areas. Jammu and Kashmir ministers meet Prime Minister, ask him to call the floods a national calamity. 1.5 lakh people evacuated so far. Army focuses on distributing relief, restoring communication. Law Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad says centre has the highest regard for the judiciary after Chief Justice R.M. Lodha calls its independence non-negotiable. And despite ceasefire, Ukraine says it's in a state of war, accuses Russia of wanting to eliminate it. President Putin calls European sanctions unacceptable. By-polls were held today for 3 Lok Sabha seats and 33 Assembly seats spread across 10 states. Moderate to brisk polling was recorded in most states, with Tripura recording the highest of voter turnout of 87% in one Assembly seat. The voting was conducted peacefully amid elaborate security arrangements. The results of the by-polls will be declared on the 16th of September. Here's a detailed report.
Voting began on a brisk note on Saturday in by-elections to 3 Lok Sabha and 33 Assembly seats in 10 states. Among the Lok Sabha states, Vadodara, Mainpuri and Medak faced by-polls, while among the Assembly seats, voting was held in 11 seats in UP, 9 seats in Gujarat, 4 in Rajasthan, 2 in West Bengal, 3 in Assam and 1 each in Tripura, Sikkim, Chhattisgarh and Andhra Pradesh. Elaborate security arrangements were made at all polling stations to prevent any untoward incident. In UP, polling was held for the Mainpuri parliamentary seat, which was vacated by Samajwadi Party chief Mulayam Singh Yadav. Tej Pratap Singh Yadav, grandnephew of Mulayam Singh Yadav, will be hoping to retain the prestigious seat. Around 53.2% votes were polled in Mainpuri till 5 p.m. Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav and his wife Dimple Yadav cast their votes in Mainpuri early on Saturday morning.
समाजवादी पार्टी की जो अभी रिपोर्ट आ रही है, उससे लगता है कि सब सीटें जीतेंगी.
Voting was also held for 11 assembly seats in UP, which is seen by political pundits as an indicator of what would be in store in the assembly polls 2 years later. About 50% voting was recorded in the 11 assembly seats.
अभी तक जो सूचना प्राप्त हुई है, जिसमें 6 बजे तक चुनाव संपन्न हुआ, वो पूर्ण रूप से शांतिपूर्ण रूप से चुनाव संपन्न हुआ है और मैनपुरी में 56.4% मतदान हुआ है.
In Gujarat, voting was held for the Vadodara Lok Sabha seat, which was vacated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi after the Lok Sabha polls. Even though polling began on a slow pace, till evening, more than 40% voter turnout was recorded in Vadodara. A total of 9 assembly seats also witnessed by-polls in Gujarat, an event which is being seen as a litmus test for State Chief Minister Anandiben Patel. Moderate to high turnout was recorded in the Medak Lok Sabha seat, which witnesses a triangular contest between ruling TRS, BJP and Congress. The by-poll was necessitated after TRS Chief and Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao vacated the seat. While a low turnout was recorded in Medak, the Nandigama Assembly segment in Andhra Pradesh recorded 30% polling. Brisk voting was also recorded in 2 assembly constituencies, Chaurangi and Basirhat Dakshin in West Bengal. The by-polls are being seen as a crucial test of Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee's popularity vis-a-vis the BJP's gaining ground in the region, as the party hopes to make its debut in the state.
I am interested to see who becomes second and who becomes third, not who is first.
In insurgency-hit Antagad Assembly seat in Chhattisgarh, nearly 50% voting was recorded till midday. In Rajasthan, the voter turnout was moderate in the 4 assembly constituencies. In Assam, moderate voting was witnessed in 3 assembly constituencies of Silchar, Lakhipur and Jamunamukh. Tripura recorded the highest voter turnout of 87%, where by-elections were held for the tribal reserved Manu Assembly seat. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Going on now, Chief Justice of India R.M. Lodha has asserted that independence of the judiciary is non-negotiable. The remarks came against the backdrop of steps to end the collegium system of higher judicial appointments. He also expressed concern over corruption in the judiciary. While the centre asserted that it has highest regard for the judiciary, opposition parties supported the CJI's views.
Days ahead of demitting office, Chief Justice of India R.M. Lodha said that India has already arrived at a stage when nobody can tinker with the independence of the judiciary.
I can say with confidence that judiciary has inherent strength and no effort will succeed in taking away the independence of judiciary. We have to ensure that corruption is eradicated in all forms in the judiciary, and once we are able to do that, that will again make our rule of law very strong.
The remarks came at a time when the government is trying to change the system to select judges to higher courts. CJI Lodha had earlier defended the present collegium system, saying that there is misleading campaign to defame the judiciary. Though he did not target the centre's move in his speech, the government steered clear of any controversy.
This government has got the highest regard for the judiciary. Independence of judiciary is sacred and sacrosanct for this government.
Other parties also supported the views expressed by the CJI.
हमारे देश की जुडिशरी पर न सिर्फ देश के लोगों का विश्वास है, दुनिया के लोग भी विश्वास करते हैं, लेकिन कुछ इस तरीके के वाक़यात हुए हैं जिनकी वजह से आज ये कहना पड़ रहा है चीफ जस्टिस को कि जुडिशरी के अंदर भ्रष्टाचार किसी भी कीमत पे बर्दाश्त नहीं किया जाएगा।
न्यायपालिका पर किसी भी तरह का प्रभाव डालने की कोशिश नहीं होनी चाहिए। न्यायपालिका की स्वतंत्रता लोकतंत्र के लिए बहुत जरूरी है।
The independence, the neutrality, the objectivity of the judiciary is non-negotiable. At the same time, judiciary must be free from prejudices. It must be free from corruption.
The 121st Constitutional Amendment Bill has already been forwarded to the state legislatures to endow the National Judicial Appointments Commission with constitutional status. It will give politicians an equal role in the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court and High Courts. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, the ruling BJP today defended its move to back UPA's choice in the Lokpal panel amid political criticism. Controversy began after the centre filed an affidavit in the Supreme Court defending the appointment of senior advocate P.P. Rao as the eminent jurist to the panel. Only a few months back, when the party was in opposition, it had opposed the appointment, calling Rao a Congress loyalist. While BJP refutes allegations of making a U-turn on the issue, other parties accused it of double standards.
इसमें कोई यू टर्न नहीं हुआ है। आप पूरे विषय को समझेंगे और एफिडेविट को देखेंगे तो पाएंगे ये किसी व्यक्ति के विषय में नहीं है, ये पद्धति के विषय में है। सरकार ने जो एफिडेविट दिया है, सरकार ने कहा है कि जो पद्धति है सिलेक्शन के लिए लोकपाल का, वो उचित है क्योंकि वो एक बहुत एमिनेंट कोलिजियम है।
पार्टी की सरकार सिर्फ लोकपाल पे यू टर्न नहीं ले रही है, एफडीआई पे यू टर्न लिया है। दूसरे तमाम मामलात में हर आदमी का बैंक अकाउंट हो उस पे यू टर्न लिया है। उन्होंने विदेशी न्यूक्लियर डील के पे एग्रीमेंट हो जापान के साथ, उस पे यू टर्न लिया। इन तमाम मुद्दों पर वो मुखालफत करते रहे हैं।
इसी को डबल स्टैंडर्ड कहते हैं ना, कि जब आप अपोजिशन में होते हैं तो दूसरी बात बोलते हैं, जब रूलिंग में खुद आ जाते हैं तो फिर उसी पर चले जाते हैं।
In more national news now, a delegation of Jammu and Kashmir ministers met Prime Minister today seeking the floods in the state be declared as a national calamity. Close to 1.5 lakh people have been evacuated from the flood-hit valley so far. The army has said that the region is slowly returning to normalcy. The focus is now on distributing relief materials and restoring communication. Here's a report.
On the 12th day of rescue and relief operation in Jammu and Kashmir, thousands more were rescued. The rescue operation, codenamed Operation Rahat 2, is said to be bigger on scale than that in Uttarakhand last year. Apart from choppers, rubber boats are being used to ferry people to safety.
वहाँ पर सब सेकंड फ्लोर तक पानी आया हुआ था, उसके ऊपर फिर हम छत पे बैठे हुए थे, हेलीकॉप्टर से हमें लाया गया और वहाँ से फिर यहाँ के लिए फ्लाइट के लिए खाना पीना सब हमें जो दिया है और बस क्या इसके बारे में क्या बताएं, वहाँ सब कुछ डूब गया है, बिल्कुल पानी ही पानी है सब चारों तरफ.
More than 750 sorties have been carried out so far to distribute 400 tons of relief material and rescue equipment in the affected areas. As relief materials pour in from the rest of the country, Jawans and volunteers focused more on distributing materials to victims. Health Minister Harshvardhan is in the state to take stock of medical facilities provided to victims.
Just now I have had meeting with all the officials here. I will assess in detail what further manpower and particularly medical manpower is required. We have teams of doctors ready in the capital and in various other places in the country where we have alerted our doctors, we have alerted even the Delhi Medical Association and the Indian Medical Association also.
Meanwhile, in Delhi, a delegation of ministers from the state met Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Saturday. Seeking the centre to declare the tragedy as a national calamity, the delegation sought help in rehabilitation and restoration work.
अगर आप देखेंगे जो स्केल और मैग्नीट्यूड ऑफ लॉस है वो बहुत ज़्यादा है और इसलिए इसको एक नेशनल कैलेमिटी डिक्लेयर किया जाना चाहिए और नेशनल कैलेमिटीज़ में जिस स्केल की मदद की जाती है जो मदद की जाती है अफेक्टेड एरियाज को अफेक्टेड स्टेट को उसी पैमाने पर हमारी मदद होनी चाहिए.
While communication still remains a big challenge, Telecom Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad said efforts are on to restore lines as soon as possible. He also offered relief for BSNL users in the valley.
BSNL ने अपनी ओर से कार्रवाई की है कि एक हफ्ते तक लोग फ्री बात कर सकते हैं. People can talk free for a week. पूंछ को छोड़कर mobile services are available somewhere substantively, somewhere partially in the entire valley.
Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah held an all-party meet in Srinagar to assess the situation. All the parties pledged to help the victims in every possible way. With Pranav Goswami and Shyam Sundar, Bureau Inputs, Rajya Sabha TV.
And for those looking for more information on the flood situation in Jammu and Kashmir, the centre has come out with helpline numbers. Here are the flood control room numbers set up by the government. For all the other national news and updates, here's our segment Nationwide. The Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad on Saturday won all the 4 seats in the Delhi University Students' Union election. The election was dominated by issues like right to accommodation and women's security. The last time ABVP made a similar clean sweep was in 1996. A bus carrying 33 people from Rishikesh to Srinagar met with an accident on National Highway 58 in Uttarakhand. 5 people died and the toll is expected to rise. 8 of the injured were hospitalized in Srinagar. Former State Minister Lakshman Dhoble has been accused of rape by a clerk at the Nalanda College of Law. The 42-year-old woman lodged a complaint on Saturday morning accusing Dhoble of the crime between 2011 and 2013. She also alleged that Dhoble threatened her not to approach the police. Well, it's time for a short break now, but on the other side, US Secretary of State John Kerry visits Egypt to garner support against Islamic State. All that and much more after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Despite a ceasefire in place, Ukraine says that it is still in a state of war with neighboring Russia. Addressing a conference with politicians and business leaders in Kiev, Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk said Russian President Vladimir Putin's goal is to take the entire country of Ukraine, since he didn't want Ukraine to be a part of the European Union. Here's more.
Ukraine is openly calling Russia an aggressor. On Saturday, Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk told European lawmakers that Russian President Putin was plotting to eliminate his country in order to restore the Soviet Union.
Let me put it bluntly, we are still in the state of war, and the key aggressor is Russian Federation. And until we get the peace, it would be really difficult to have real changes.
Ukraine and Western countries are accusing Russia of helping the pro-Russian rebels in eastern Ukraine. Yatsenyuk said only NATO could defend the ex-Soviet republic from external aggression.
The key priority, not only for Ukraine, but the key priority for the entire world, is to deter Russia and to stop the war. His goal is to take the entire Ukraine. He cannot cope with an idea that Ukraine would be a part of big EU family. He wants to restore the Soviet Union.
Kiev and its Western backers accuse Moscow of sending troops and tanks into eastern Ukraine in support of the pro-Russian separatists. On Saturday, its defense spokesperson reported that Russian cargo is moving across the Ukrainian border illegally. Kiev and Western officials fear such convoys may contain military equipment to help the rebels.
Сьогодні вночі в порушення встановленого порядку прикордонно-митного оформлення без присутності представників Міжнародного комітету Червоного Хреста російською стороною здійснено незаконне переміщення так званого гуманітарного вантажу через пункт пропуску Донецьк Російської Федерації.
There are reports of heavy fighting near the airport in Donetsk, one of the main rebel-held cities. The airport is currently controlled by government forces who have held out against the rebels since June. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
Supporters of keeping Scotland in the United Kingdom have clawed back a tiny lead over separatists. Less than a week before Scots vote in an independence referendum that is balanced on a knife's edge, opinion surveys have not been able to give a decisive answer.
Surveys conducted on Scotland's independence have not been able to tip the balance in favour of any of the parties concerned. Pollsters have shown a surge in support for independence since late August as the secessionist campaign led by Alex Salmond won over supporters of the traditionally unionist Labour Party and some female voters in Scotland.
Not just the opinion polls today, but of course the response in the communities, I think indicate perfectly conclusively that the people of Scotland are not going to be bullied by big oil, by big supermarkets, by big London government. We're not going to be bullied out of our once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build a more prosperous country and a fairer society.
In a hurried attempt to win back support for the Union, the opposition Labour Party sent dozens of lawmakers to Scotland, where it is the only political force that rivals the Scottish nationalists.
Higher food bills, higher shopping bills, lost jobs, destroyed opportunities, lost investment, an economic minefield.
Labour leader Ed Miliband urged his party to tell supporters that a no vote would mean more powers for Scotland that have been promised by all three major parties in the British Parliament.
So the first thing you've got to go out and say to people is a vote for no is not a vote for no change. It is a vote for stronger powers, for a stronger Scotland and a stronger Scottish Parliament.
The pro-independence camp says it is time for Scots to rule their own country and build a fairer society without being told what to do by political elite in London. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
US Secretary of State John Kerry reached Egypt on Saturday. He met Egypt's president as well as the Arab League chief in his effort to forge an alliance against the Islamic State. He has already enlisted the support of 10 Arab states so far, but ruled out Iran joining the US-led coalition. Meanwhile, Iraq has warned US of civilians at risk from US airstrikes against the militants.
On Saturday, US Secretary of State John Kerry arrived in Egypt on the latest leg of a regional tour to forge a coalition against Islamic State jihadists in Iraq and Syria. amid strained ties since last year's military coup in the African nation. Kerry is looking forward to its crucial support to tackle Islamic State militants in Iraq and Syria. He met President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Arab League chief Nabil al-Arabi in Cairo. He expressed confidence to garner the support from the Arab group, which could prove critical in its operation against the militants.
I'm comfortable that this will be a broad-based coalition with Arab nations, European nations, with the United States, others contributing to every single different facet of what President Obama laid out as a strategy and fully embracing the need to degrade and destroy ISIL.
Turkish Prime Minister said that US action in Iraq will not be enough to bring stability in the region. His remarks came shortly after his meeting with Kerry.
Ama bu tehditlere karşı sergilenen ortak tutumun bir taraf adına diğer tarafa dönük bir operasyon haline dönüşmemesine özen göstermek.
Meanwhile, Iraq has warned US of possible civilian casualties in its airstrikes against Islamic State militants.
أن يكون مركز ومحدد وعلى مجاميع إرهابية وداعش ثبت بما لا يدع مجال للشك أنها داعش أو مجاميع إرهابية. أما القصف العشوائي.
Earlier this week, President Barack Obama unveiled a rough plan to fight the Islamic State militants simultaneously in Iraq and Syria. On Friday, the CIA said that the group has as many as 30,000 fighters in both Iraq and Syria. After NATO backed the US efforts, Washington is looking for support in the Middle East countries to lead the operation against the militant group. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
It's time for a short break now, but up next, more international news, and we'll also tell you all about the match between Manchester City and Arsenal in the English Premier League. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back, you're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Let's now bring you up to date with the other international news and updates in our segment, Global Buzz. A Pakistan court ordered the arrest of 100 opposition activists for what it called holding illegal protests. The move prompted a tense confrontation between the demonstrators and police once again in Islamabad. The protesters, led by Imran Khan and cleric Tahir-ul-Qadri, are locked in a bitter standoff with the government for refusing to leave their protest camp until Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif resigns. South Africa's National Prosecution Authority expressed disappointment over the verdict on Olympic and Paralympic track star Oscar Pistorius. Pistorius was found guilty of culpable homicide but cleared of the original charge of premeditated murder. There were mixed reactions to the verdict on the streets. Some residents allege that Pistorius received preferential treatment. Sentencing in the case is set for the 13th of October. Chinese President Xi Jinping met the presidents of Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan and Kyrgyzstan on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Xi urged the Central Asian states to enhance cooperation by implementing Silk Road Initiative, deepening energy and anti-terrorism cooperation. China, Russia and 4 Central Asian nations formed the SCO in 2001 to fight threats posed by radical Islam. Let's now bring you up to date with all the sports news from across the world. Here's our latest sports beat. Roger Federer and Stanislas Wawrinka put Switzerland in firm control in the Davis Cup semi-final tie against Italy. After Federer overcame Simone Bololi in the first singles, Wawrinka defeated Fognini 6-2, 6-3, 6-2 in straight sets to give Switzerland the lead. Switzerland have reached the final once, losing to US in 1992. Martin Demichelis helped Manchester City to a 2-2 draw against Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium on Saturday. Sergio Aguero gave City the lead in the 28th minute, but Wilshere and Sanchez scored in the second half to put the home side in front. However, Demichelis netted a late header to ensure City didn't lose a point. Brazilian forward Ronaldinho arrived in Mexico to join his new club Gallos Blancos. The 34-year-old forward had signed a 2-year contract with the club just before the transfer window closed last week. The former Barcelona striker had been without a club since leaving Brazil's Atlético Mineiro after he led them to the first Copa Libertadores crown last year. That's it on this edition of the Bulletin. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.